Welcome to this webinar on the Point in Time Count Unsheltered Survey. My name is Amy Stetzel, and I am the project manager with Minnesota's Office to Prevent and End Homelessness. My boss, Kathy Tenbrook, and I have been working closely with all of the continuum of care coordinators across the state to prepare for this year's Point in Time Count. On behalf of all of us, thank you for your time and commitment to ensuring individuals, youth, and families experiencing homelessness across the state are identified and connected to the services they need to become stably housed. This webinar will give instructions, explanations, and some helpful tips in completing the Point in Time Sheltered Survey. So what is the Point in Time Count? Well, the Point in Time Count, or PIT, as I will usually refer to it, is one of the main ways we measure homelessness in our state. It provides us with a snapshot of what homelessness looks like across Minnesota at one point in time. The federal government requires that each state attempt to count all people experiencing homelessness on one particular night of the year. The federal government also requires that every state conduct their PIT count within the last 10 days in January. This year, Minnesota's PIT count is on the night of Thursday, January 28, 2016. The PIT count includes a count of people who are living in unsheltered situations, such as those who are living outside, on the streets, in abandoned buildings, etc., and of people who are temporarily sheltered, those who are living in emergency shelters, transitional housing programs, or put up in motels through a social service program. This webinar will focus on the sheltered portion of the PIT count. So we do the PIT count for a few different reasons. It helps us to understand the scope of homelessness and identify trends so we can better target our resources, improve services, and identify gaps in service. It helps us to use data to justify current and new services and programs. Data really helps to tell our story and make the case for more resources. It also helps us raise community awareness and political awareness. It is a critical source of national data on the number and characteristics of people who are homeless in the U.S. As we've already mentioned, the PIT count is a federal requirement. Additionally, the PIT count is the main data source used for measuring national progress in meeting the goals and opening doors, the federal strategic plan to prevent and end homelessness. And PIT count data is provided to Congress on the general homeless population and subpopulations of homeless persons, including veterans, families, chronically homeless individuals, and youth across the nation. Lastly, data collected through the PIT count is used as one of the main tools to measure progress on our state's Heading Home plan to prevent and end homelessness. The PIT count is a statewide effort led by our 10 continuum of care regions throughout the state. Working together as a state is critical to achieve the goals of preventing and ending homelessness for the families, youth, and individuals who are experiencing or at risk of experiencing homelessness in Minnesota. In alignment with the federal government, the state of Minnesota is working towards the population goals of resolving and preventing future veteran homelessness, ending chronic homelessness in 2017, preventing and ending homelessness among youth unaccompanied by parents or guardians in 2020, and preventing and ending homelessness among families with children in 2020. As I noted before, the results from the PIT count are how we as a state measure our progress towards achieving these goals. So what's new in 2016? Well, Star Wars: The Force Awakens has surpassed Avatar to become the top grossing film in North America. However, when inflation is factored in, Gone with the Wind remains the highest grossing film in history, with the original Star Wars closely on its heels. I will note here, however, that Star Wars: The Force Awakens is still behind two of my favorites, The Sound of Music and E.T., the Extraterrestrial, who's really the cutest extraterrestrial anyone's ever seen. I'm sure what you're saying right now to yourself is, no, Amy, what's new in 2016 for the PIT count? Well, here's what's new in 2016 for the PIT count. The biggest change for this year is that there is an update to the definition of chronic homelessness and our Veterans Rapid Response teams that we're deploying across the state on the night of the PIT count, both of which we will go into more detail later in the webinar. Additionally, some of you might remember that last year we were required to ask anyone who identified as transgender if they were male to female or female to male transgender. We no longer will need to do that. If someone identifies as transgender, you mark that category on the survey. Do not have to ask them any further details. Youth household information will again be collected for both parenting youth and unaccompanied youth under the age of 25, but this year's demographic information will be collected separately for unaccompanied youth and parenting youth, which you will see reflected in the survey. So what's continuing into 2016? Well, Minnesota will continue to focus on veterans in this year's PIT count by asking targeted questions and referring veterans to services through the Veterans Registry. We will also be attempting to link veterans directly to housing options and resources using rapid response teams. There will be much more detail later on in the webinar on veterans, so we'll save more detail on that subject for later. Youth household information will again be collected for both parenting youth and unaccompanied youth under the age of 25. And lastly, persons who report identification in at least 2 race categories will be included in the multiple races category. As noted, the PIT Sheltered Survey is an online survey tool that you will receive a link to on the morning after the PIT count, which is the morning of Friday, January 29th. You will have 2 weeks to complete and submit that survey. So who should complete the online survey? Well, the sheltered portion of the PIT count is to count only people staying in emergency shelters, transitional housing programs, and programs that provide emergency motel stays. This OEO PIT Sheltered Survey should be completed by providers of those 3 types of programs that do not participate in the Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS. Providers that are in HMIS will have their data pulled directly from that system and won't need to report their PIT data any other way. So those providers will not need to complete this survey. I'm going to note quickly here that in Hennepin County, that's not the case. The Hennepin County Office to End Homelessness is asking that all of their providers complete the OEO PIT Sheltered Survey. So if you're a Hennepin County person, know that this OEO Sheltered Survey is for you, even if you have all of your data in HMIS. Lastly, agencies that have multiple programs that need to report for the PIT should receive multiple emails with unique links to complete a separate survey for each program. So who should not complete this survey? Again, it's providers with 100% of their beds covered by HMIS, except if you're in Hennepin County. And rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing programs are not counted in the PIT. Rapid rehousing is considered permanent housing, and therefore individuals and families who are enrolled in rapid rehousing and residing in permanent housing on the night of the PIT count are not included in the sheltered count. However, homeless households currently residing on the street in an emergency shelter, transitional housing, or safe haven, but who are also enrolled in a rapid rehousing program and awaiting housing placement should be counted based on where they resided on the night of the count. For example, a person residing in an emergency shelter and being assisted by a rapid rehousing project to obtain housing must be counted in the sheltered PIT count for the emergency shelter. All right, so now we're really going to dive into the actual survey. So I just wanted you to know that this webinar will cover a section-by-section walkthrough of the PIT Sheltered Survey. This actual survey will be online, but a Microsoft Word example version of the survey was attached to the email you received with a link to this webinar. You can print that example survey out and follow along as you watch this webinar if you'd like. I will mention some tips for making sure the data you are reporting makes sense and is accurate. Please feel free to contact me, Amy Stetzel, or Sumi Lee, our Humphrey Institute graduate student intern extraordinaire who will be helping us this year on the PIT survey data, with any questions you might have before the date of the PIT count or after when you are working on completing the survey. We would love to answer any questions you have beforehand so that the data submitted is as accurate as possible. So there's 8 sections to the sheltered survey, and you can read these sections through. Section 1 is about respondent information. Section 2 is instructions and definitions and who should be counted in the PIT count. Section 3 refers to your total night capacity. Section 4 really is all about the 3 main household types, which are households with children, households without children, and unaccompanied minor youth. Section 5 is a population subset, which is on youth households. Section 6 is also a population subset on veterans and veteran households. Section 7 is all about subpopulations. and Section 8 is all on those experiencing chronic homelessness. We will walk through all of these sections in the next slides. This is really just giving you an overview of the entire sheltered survey. So, respondent information. The first section of the survey lists some information about your program and contact information. This section will be pre-populated with the information we have on record, but please update any information that is incorrect, blank, or says update here. It is very important for us to have the most accurate information here so we know we've counted all appropriate programs. Next in the survey, there will be instructions. It is important that you read the instructions before completing the survey. The PIT count date is Thursday, January 28th, 2016. This PIT survey is to report only on people your program served on the night of January 28th, which is from sundown on Thursday, January 28th to sun up on Friday, January 29th. You will receive a link to take the survey online on the morning of Friday, January 29th, and you will have 2 weeks to complete and submit the survey with a deadline of Thursday, February 12th. There will be a save button in the survey, so you don't have to complete the survey in one sitting, and you can go back to previous pages and edit any information you've already entered. So let's take a moment to review HUD household composition definitions. A household, again, is a single person or group of people occupying a single dwelling. For the purposes of this survey, the head of the household is the oldest person living in the household. We're going to focus first on adults, young adults, and children. So an adult is any person age 25 and older, a young adult is any person age 18 through 24, and a child is a person age 0 through 17 who is living with a parent, guardian, or caretaker. As we just reviewed, an adult is defined in the PIT count as a person aged 25 or older, and they can fall into 3 categories in the PIT count. An adult can be a single adult, they can be a part of an adult couple, or they can be a part of an adult-headed family. Adult-headed families are headed by 1 or more adults aged 25 or older and include children aged 0 to 17 or young adults aged 18 to 24. Now let's take a look at the household composition definitions for youth. And I will remind you again that a household is defined as a single person or group of people occupying a single dwelling. For the purpose of this survey, the head of the household is the oldest person living in the household. Youth is an umbrella term that refers to people aged 0 through 24 who are living on their own without a parent or guardian. Youth may or may not have their own dependent children. The youth household composition category includes both parenting youth, unaccompanied youth. Parenting youth is a young adult or minor who is living on their own without a parent or guardian and has their own dependent children. An unaccompanied youth is a person aged 0 through 24 who is living on their own without a parent or guardian. As we just reviewed, a youth is defined as anyone aged 0 through 24 who is living on their own without a parent or guardian. Youth living on their own without a parent or guardian fall into one of 2 categories in the PIT count. They are parenting youth, who are parenting dependent children of their own, or unaccompanied youth. These 2 categories are further broken down by age and household type, which you'll see reflected in your survey. Chronic homelessness. Chronic homelessness definition changed a bit this year. So chronic homelessness is defined as an individual, family, or youth who has a disability and has been homeless for 1 year or more, or has been homeless on 4 or more occasions in the last 3 years, where the combined length of time homeless in those occasions is at least 12 months. That orange highlighted part of sentence B, that is the new addition this year to the chronic homelessness definition. So the first section of the survey where you'll actually start reporting numbers is called total nightly capacity. In this section, you should report the total capacity if your program were full. You should enter a number for both units and beds to the best of your ability. Depending on your program model, you may need to estimate one or both of these numbers. The total number of units you report should not be larger than the total number of beds. Generally, the number you report for unit capacity should not be lower than the total number of households served, which you will report in the next section, and the number reported for bed capacity should not be lower than the total number of individuals served, which is also reported in the next section. We know that some shelters have overflow space and take in more people than they actually have beds to serve. In this case, you may report serving more individuals than you have capacity for. In this situation, you can make a note about this at the end of the survey where there's space to write comments. This next section on the total served in the program gives you an opportunity to report the total number of all households and individuals your program served on the night of the pig count. First, you will report the total number of households. If your program didn't serve anyone on the night of the pit, then you can report 0 households served, and the survey will skip to the very end. Next, you will report total individuals served by the different age groups. So you will be asked to report the total number of adults, young adults, unaccompanied minor youth, and children. If you didn't serve anyone of a particular age group, please enter 0. A total will auto-populate. Please refer to this total to verify that the numbers you reported are accurate. The next 3 sections of the survey are broken up by household type. The 3 main household types are: first, households headed by an individual age 18 or older with children. The second type is households headed by an individual age 18 or older without children, which is single people or couples who do not have children living with them. And the third household type is households headed by an unaccompanied minor youth. This category is for households headed by someone who is under the age of 18 and includes households both with and without dependent children. Each of the households and individuals your program serves on the night of the pig count should be reported in one of these 3 sections. There is no overlap between these 3 sections. In each of the 3 main household type sections, you will first report the number of households, and then you will report the number of individuals by age groups. For example, adults, young adults, children, etc. A total of individuals will auto-populate based on what you report in each age category. Please check this total to make sure it is correct. If you report 0 for the number of households served, then the survey will automatically skip the questions on individuals and will move you to the next section of the survey. Each household type section also requires a count of the gender, ethnicity, and race of the individuals within those households. Gender options are male, female, or transgender. Ethnicity options are Hispanic, Latino, or non-Hispanic, non-Latino, and ethnicity should be reported for all individuals. Race options are white, black, or African American, Asian, American Indian or Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, and multiple races. At least one race should be reported for each individual. All these gender, ethnicity, and race categories are categories determined by HUD. The totals that auto-populate under each of these categories should match the total individuals of the household type section. If, for example, you have 40 total individuals in the household with children section, then there should also be a total of 40 reported under gender, ethnicity, and race for that section. Following the 3 sections on the 3 main household types, there will be 2 sections on youth households, one for parenting youth and one for unaccompanied youth. Remember, youth households are households headed by individuals who are aged 0 through 24. The youth household section is a subset of the 3 previous household type sections. So the households you report here will have already been reported in one of the previous 3 main sections. All youth fall into one of the main household types: households with children, households without children, or unaccompanied minor youth. Similar to the previous 3 sections, you will first report the total number of parenting youth or unaccompanied youth households. If you report 0 here, then the survey will skip the rest of this section and move you to the next. For each household type of parenting or unaccompanied youth, the survey will ask about the number of youth in those households, age 0 through 17 and age 18 through 24, and also the number of dependent children where applicable. Then there will be questions again on gender, ethnicity, and race. These questions should only be answered for the youth heads of households or youth parents, not on any dependent children. The next section of this survey is on veterans. This part of the webinar was put together by Eric Grumdahl, who is with the state's Office to Prevent and End Homelessness and the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs. Eric is our state's special advisor on ending veteran homelessness and is leading our efforts in this area. As you probably know, Minnesota has committed to end veteran homelessness. That is enshrined as one of the priorities of our state's Heading Home plan. Since 2010, veteran homelessness has decreased by 54% in Minnesota, but we have more work to do. The point-in-time count is a critical vehicle for measuring our progress on this goal. Let me say a word about why we are focusing so intently on veteran homelessness. First, there is a clear moral imperative to ensure that those who have risked their lives for the nation we call home have a home of their own to go to. What is significant about veteran homelessness is that this moral imperative has motivated tremendous efforts in the private sector and at every level of government. Put another way, veterans are the one population where the resources dedicated to solving the problem are actually scaled at a level that we can solve the problem. That makes the need to reliably document our efforts even more important, so that we can show that when the right resources are available, we can end homelessness for every veteran and indeed for everyone. Thanks to a collaboration of many organizations all across the state, we've made remarkable progress on the goal. Starting with last year's point-in-time count, when veterans experiencing homelessness all across the state began joining the Homeless Veteran Registry, we have a better understanding than ever before of the specific needs and challenges that veterans who remain homeless face. This graph shows our current progress on the goal. As you can see, in 2015, we housed more veterans than we found during the point-in-time count a year ago, but there are still 265 veterans we know now by name who still need a housing solution. For over 100 of these veterans, we have a housing plan in place, a way to pay rent, and access to ongoing support. For most of these veterans, the remaining challenge is finding a willing landlord, and our registry team is actively working with these veterans on that challenge. For the remaining 157 veterans, we still need a housing plan. That's where a new approach to this year's point-in-time count comes in. To help us reach the goal, especially for those veterans without a housing plan, we're approaching the point-in-time count a little differently this year. The gist is that we want to make sure that we find every veteran we can, and when we do, that we make sure that every veteran is on a path to housing. We will do this by connecting veterans in real time with the housing planner, using the LinkVet hotline starting the day of January 28th and going to noon Friday, January 29th. LinkVet will confirm that they are a veteran, determine whether they are on the registry, and whether they have a housing plan. If they are a veteran but don't have a housing plan, we'll connect them in real time with a housing planner. Since you are receiving the link to this survey the morning of January 29th, we know this process will work a bit differently for you. We are asking you to reach out to LinkVet on the day of January 28th through noon on January 29th to connect any veteran you may encounter at your program that would like housing help. Amy, will also be sending all of you an email reminding you of this the day before January 28th. So I'll be sending you an email January 27th. Identifying veterans. For the purpose of this PIT sheltered survey, please ask the following 2 questions to all individuals age 18 and older in your program on the night of the PIT count. Did you serve in the United States Armed Forces, which includes the Army, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard? Did you serve on active duty or in the National Guard or Reserve? Before the night of the PIT, it is important that you have a plan in place to ask all adults in your program the 2 veteran questions and complete the veteran registry form with the appropriate individuals. Depending on the size of your program, this may require significant time and energy by staff and/or volunteers, and it is a critical part of this process, so please be prepared to collect this information. Anyone who answers yes to either question should be invited to join the registry. Release forms for every part of the state are available at the web address shown here. For every veteran who chooses to join, please fax their completed forms to LinkVet at the number on the last page of the form that is also listed here on the screen. Remember, these forms contain personal identifying information, so please treat them accordingly and with care. In addition, we need you to complete every survey question that ensures we've counted every veteran experiencing homelessness. First, the survey asks you to report the total number of individuals who answered yes to either of these two questions. Next, it asks you to record how many of these veterans agreed to join the registry and completed the form. This is so we know how many veterans opted to join the registry and how many did not. Next in the survey, you will report information on households that include a veteran. If you had anyone that answered yes to either of the two veteran questions, you will report information on their households here. This section is also divided into households with dependent children and households without dependent children. You will answer questions on the number of households, the number of total individuals in the households, and the number of veterans in the households. You will then report on gender, ethnicity, and race, which should only be reported for the veteran, not anyone else in the household. We really appreciate your help and cooperation with these additional efforts to ensure that we reach every single veteran and their family in Minnesota during this year's count. Here's Eric Grumdahl's contact information. He is happy to answer any questions you may have related to the Veteran Registry and this year's veteran portion of the PIC count. His contact information is also listed at the end of the webinar. The second to last section of the survey is to report on some different subpopulations. For the first 4 subpopulations, you only need to report on individuals age 18 and older. These 4 subpopulations are those with a serious mental illness, those with a substance use disorder, individuals with HIV or AIDS, and victims of domestic violence. The next subpopulation is for individuals who have ever been in the foster care system. This should be reported for all individuals of any age. The last section of the survey is to report on those who are identified as chronically homeless. Individuals who are chronically homeless have been homeless continuously for at least 1 year or have had at least 4 separate instances of homelessness in the last 3 years, where the combined length of time homeless in those occasions is at least 12 months and can be diagnosed with a disabling condition. So again, remember the orange highlighted words here on your screen. That is the new chronic homeless definition this year. You will be asked to report on the number of chronically homeless single individuals and the number of chronically homeless families, as well as the number of individuals within those families. This year, HUD would like us to count everyone who is chronically homeless, including those under the age of 18. A chronically homeless family is a household with multiple people where the head of household meets the chronically homeless definition. Remember that this number could include parenting youth under the age of 18. A chronically homeless single individual is a single adult who does not have any children living with them and meets the chronically homeless definition. Remember, this could include unaccompanied youth under the age of 18. Next, you will be asked to report the same information for chronically homeless veterans, singles, and families. If you had anyone answer yes to either of the 2 veteran questions who also meets the chronically homeless definition, you will report that here. Lastly, there will be a space to write any comments or anecdotal information regarding your data. There will be a submit button at the end of the survey. You should not click this until you have reviewed all your data and are ready to submit the completed survey. Once you click submit, you will no longer be able to edit your data. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch the webinar and complete the point-in-time sheltered survey. Your participation in this process is greatly appreciated, and it is an important contribution to our state's efforts to end homelessness. Please feel free to contact me with any questions about this survey, and you can contact Eric Grumdahl with any specific veteran questions as well. Thank you again, and we look forward to receiving your completed survey soon.